Welcome to Grow Fast, Grow Smart, the PI Playbook by Accelerator, the podcast exclusively designed to help personal injury law firms reach their full potential and serve their clients better. Today's episode is hosted by Chad Dudley, partner at Dudley, DeBosier Injury Lawyers and co-founder of Accelerator Law Firm Consultants.
Welcome to the Grow Fast, Grow Smart, the PI Playbook Accelerator podcast. Guys, I'm Chad Dudley, one of the partners at Dudley DeBosier, and I'm here today with one of my other partners, Stephen DeBosier, and one of our managing attorneys, Paul Wilkins. And today we're going to talk about the concept of how do you pick which cases you should take to trial, which cases you probably shouldn't take to trial. And it's a big issue for a lot of firms. We've got a bunch of cases, and the question is, when do you hold them? When do you fold them? Steve, Paul, good to have you guys here. I can see you all the time, but fun to talk about this topic for our audience. Let's just kind of start. Steve, what are you looking for when you're looking at the cases and you're saying, you know what, I want to know whether or not this is a good case to take to trial or not?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is immediately steal one of Paul's lines that I just heard, which is, we need to figure out which cases we're going to try by design and not by default. And Paul, I'm going to steal a little bit of that, and you can explain it later. But what you don't want to do is all of a sudden find yourself screwing around on the case, and now you got to try it because you haven't done anything or you're not ready for it. So we look at it very differently, and Paul can help me out a lot on this. We have transitioned from the way we used to handle cases and what cases we tried to now how we make the decision what cases we're going to try. October of 2013 is the date that I decided I was not going to try cases that insurance companies wanted me to try, because you can imagine what kind of cases they want you to try, right? And the reason why it was October 2013 is I got my teeth kicked in because I tried a case they wanted me to try. And so we're looking at them now as to what key factors do we want to know before we walk into a courtroom. And so we use this simple math formula, which is you got to have a bad defendant and a worthy plaintiff. So let me back up and let's talk about how we used to try cases, which is simply this. Was a person hurt? Do you think we can get sympathy from a jury about how badly they were hurt? And so we go in there and put the person on the stand and talk about their herniated disc or whatever it is that they had. And hopefully the jury would go, oh, what was me? Let's give them some money. And did that work, Paul?
Part of the equation that Steve says is a good plaintiff, worthy plaintiff, and a bad defendant. And so that equals good case, right? And sort of the starting point for that is you want to try the good cases and some of the bad cases. The process of identifying a good plaintiff sounds easy, but what's required for that is you got to know your plaintiff, you got to know your client. And so what we found is that if we devise a way to rank the qualities of clients, qualities of defendants, and the other aspects of the case, then it makes people go through that process earlier in the game, and the sooner the better. And so, in order to answer the question of where does the quality or the presentation of my client fall on the scale, somebody's got to go and get to know the client. And that's always the start of a good case, is knowing your client, knowing what are the parts of the client that a jury will align themselves with and get behind. And then the other aspects, what are the things we need to know more about the client, learn more, and not just write it off as this client's got some problems, which is we hear too often, but how do we deal with the things that our client's struggling with? And is it because of this case that they're struggling with it, or is this case making those things worse? So getting to know the client is the start of being able to answer these questions.
But I want to be
Paul,
go ahead, yeah.
a lot of times we'll look at the case and you said, look, we want to make sure we try our cases by design and not by default, or they just happen to roll towards the trial date. And we talk about making that start, about choosing which cases we litigate. Which cases do we file suit on? Which cases do we not file suit on? And I know that there's some play about negotiations and where we get to pre-suit in negotiations that drives a large part of that conversation. But is that the first sort of gatekeeping measure? Is okay, let's not file suit on bad cases, and not file suit on cases that we don't want to try. And I know that's a tough standard, but how do you judge that, or how do you guys? I know we're looking at that at the firm, but how do you guys look at it when we're deciding what cases to put in suit?
I think the tendency is to wait until it's too late to take advantage of a good case. There's a compelling story to tell about this defendant, that people want to do something about this defendant. A compelling story to tell about our client. People will want to help our client. And so if that case gets sort of caught in the pipeline with all the other cases, and it gets to the point, and a lot of times it's because people think, well, this case might settle, which is the death knell of preparing a good case for trial. Then you get to a point where either it's too late to do something about a bad case without having to try it, or it's too late to do something about a good case to take advantage of the qualities that make it good. And so separating those cases at the beginning and having the best resources of the firm and the most experienced litigators in the firm have eyes on those cases from the beginning to direct the discovery and decisions that go into that case is the only way you're going to have the chance to try a good case on its merits. The biggest challenge with trying a good case is defendants usually want to pay full value once they realize how good it is. Right? I say full value. They want to pay a lot of money, and kids sometimes can be mistaken as full value when it's not.
Yeah, but it's our job to find that, though, right? It's our job to figure out. We got to make sure they understand it's about to be bad for them.
Right. Yeah, and I know we're, early on in the stages of the case, we're very intentional about saying, okay, this is a case that might be a good case to try. This is a case that's maybe not going to try, and we try to. The goal is to be intentional about which one's going to suit. Read something the other day, and I think it resonated. Going, yeah, whether it's a good result at trial is because you did the work early on. And that's what you're saying, huh, Paul and Steve? Where not waiting to the end to try and fix everything, right? Where sometimes it was an interesting topic. So, we outsource. And I say outsource. Do you get a paralegal to draft the complaint? You get a paralegal to draft written discovery versus making it intentional and making it specific for that case. And there's a lot of heavy lifting that if you do it on the front end, it helps on the back end. What are some things that I guess in the early stages of the case, maybe say before depositions, that you guys are looking for or trying to flesh out to determine whether or not this is a case to try?
Well, let me go back to my math formula, because those that know me, I'm kind of a math guy. But this formula is important, and there's a reason why the bad defendant is first and the good plaintiff is second. Because if you don't figure out if you have a bad plaintiff, the jury will never care about your client. And the other part about that is once the defendants know they have a bad client and they're going to have to sit next to a bad defendant, that's when they get really nervous. So we don't wait till discovery. We go in there and we start doing research on the defendant. And so let me give you my analogy that I use often, is that if I ask anybody, if I go to any place, if I walk into your office right now, if you're listening, and I ask you, what is the value of somebody that has a herniated disc in their neck from a wreck and has a surgery? Most people can rattle off some number as to what the value of that is as far as, general damages. And so my question to you does it matter what the defendant did? And most people say no. And so this is the way I look at it. It's simply this. If somebody's driving down the road and they run into the back of somebody and they hurt them and they need a neck surgery, that's one thing. If they're reaching back and trying to protect their child who's choking on a grape, and then all of a sudden they run into the back of somebody, that has a value of something. But if that same driver is driving down the road, texting on their phone, or the term I use is they're looking at pornography on their phone or something like that, and then they run in the back of somebody, that has a totally separate value. And so we're looking at it from the very beginning. What is it that the jury can go, wait a minute, I am not like that defendant. That is not something I would do. But just running into the back of somebody, just about anybody can relate to. And they're like, oh, I don't want to punish somebody for that. They just made a mistake. It's just an unfortunate accident, right? Versus somebody making a conscious decision to do something dangerous that the jury can say, wait a minute now, that ain't cool. And then they'll care about your client. But if you put it in reverse order and tell them how sympathetic we should be for the client, ain't gonna work. So from the beginning, social media, we have a team of people that are out there looking for what is going on with this defendant, not just the driver, but the company. We have people that go back, and it's called the Wayback Machine, and they go back and look at their websites from years back. What are they promising the public? Is there some hypocrisy? Does the company say we have the very best drivers? Does the company say we only hire drivers that have clean driving records? And then you find out they have crack addicts driving their trucks. These are all things we're looking for, because when we find that, that's a big indicator of us saying, man, that's the case we really need to look at. And there are cases that are bad enough where I don't give a rat's ass what our client's injuries are. I really don't. If there's something there that the jury can hang their hat on, great. What I'm really looking for is, can a jury say, we got to stop this?
And so, Steve, pre depositions, we're doing research, written discovery, and so forth, and those are starting to get the elements of, hey, we like what we see here in terms of taking this case to trial. You guys sharing, what are you looking to get going into depositions, and what additional factors you're looking to build on those themes, right? That you just mentioned. What did the defendant do wrong? Is it something that would make the juror distance themselves from the defendant's actions and go, I would never do that. Of course it happened. Versus, like you use the example, mom reaching in the back because the kid's choking. Oh, I would absolutely do. I would have done the same thing. That could have easily have happened to me, right? And so as you kind of are marching towards a trial date, obviously pre-depositions, there's a lot of research that goes into that. But what are we looking for from your perspective in terms of at depositions, whether it's the corporate defendant, whether it's the defendant driver, whether it's some of our witnesses trying to pull out, or what story are you trying to put together at that point to make it more attractive to try the case?
Well, what we're trying to do is particularly if you're talking about an employee of a company, we're really trying to not concentrate on the driver or the employee, but what the company did. And if anybody's seen anything I've ever done, the biggest analogy I use is the movie Jaws. I ask people who's the villain in Jaws, and everybody says it's the shark. And I'm like, oh, the shark's doing shark-like things, right? And so we're not so worried about the shark doing shark-like things. A meth addict truck driver does meth. That's what they do. But it's the person that puts the meth addict truck driver behind the wheel. That's what we're looking for. So we're looking for anything that we can show the jury. This is something that you don't expect should be going on in our society. This is something that should not be happening. And the way you don't do it, I'll get to how you do it. The way you don't do it is send interrogatories to say, tell me what happened. Because what happens when you send an interrogatory that says, tell me what happened? Paul, what answer do you get?
You get a very favorable answer crafted by a defense attorney that will reinforce that story with his client once they get their chance to tell the actual story.
That's right. So you can send interrogatories if you feel good about it. You enjoy doing it. You like thinking you're cool by sending interrogatories and telling what happened. You're wasting your time, in my opinion. Send requests for production of documents. Tell me about this driver qualification file. Tell me why you hired this guy. Tell me, did you drug test him? Tell me when you found out that he got 4 speeding tickets, why you kept him going. These are all requests for production of documents so that you don't have to get their opinion. When I say their opinion, the lawyer's opinion. What you're really looking for is these people that are on the road that don't give a rat's ass about anybody else. Those are the people you want to go depose to find out, what do you really know? And there's always somebody that feels guilty about what happened. And there's somebody out there willing to say, hey, man, I knew Bob was a bad driver. I knew Bob kept going behind the office at periods of time during the day. I had a pretty good idea what Bob was doing behind the office. he probably shouldn't have been driving. There's always somebody, if you look hard enough, for those kind of people.
You want to leave open the possibility that the defense attorney can respond to your discovery request by finding documents, giving documents over to you, versus having to read the documents, interpret the documents, and answer a question that you've asked him to answer. So hand me the documents, I'll find the answers myself, and then we'll come back with either depositions or interrogatories or requests for admission to fine-tune or get explanations for things that we need explained.
And requests for admissions are beautiful. For me, it's a huge deal. You should implement it if you're not using it now. Requests for admissions of fact that defense lawyers, lazy defense lawyers, which are most of them, no offense to you guys out there, listen, they just can't help but just deny everything. Do you admit a crash happened on this day? Denied. Do you admit the name of the driver was Joe Smith? Denied.
Denied is written.
And then you stand there and denied is right. Well, I just wrote, is this his name? You know? And so when you go depose the truck driver, you say, hey, is your name John Smith? Well, yeah. Well, why'd you say it wasn't? I never said it wasn't. And then all of a sudden everybody's looking around at each other on the other side going, what happened here? Or more importantly, the jury is going, wait a minute. Why are you denying what your name is? Why are you denying that a crash happened? Are you just denying everything? Or because defense lawyers don't want to take the time to figure out what's important that they should deny. Something you just have to admit, right?
Yeah, and we often talk about, when we're ultimately getting to trial, that we're essentially trying to tell a story, right? We're trying to present something that makes sense, something that matters to the jury, something that obviously meets our burden of proof, and that, ideally we're, as I think our friend Roger Dodd say, hey, try and tell their story through the defendant's witnesses, right? And how can you prepare that through written discovery and obviously getting some of it out of them during depositions. We talk about the story starts with, well, what's your elements of proof? What do you got to show there? What are themes or things you want to weave into that? What are your key facts? And having those things lined out. And, it's got to make sense. It's got to make a lot of sense in getting the defendants to support that story. Paul, you're talking about, I know that one thing you introduced at our firm was this basically a case scoring, right? Looking at some of the things that you mentioned and giving a score or allowing a score to whether or not that makes it worthy to take the trial or makes sense to take it to trial. You want to articulate a little bit about that or go into a little bit more depth about how you use that to help us pick cases to try?
It's inspired by the bad defendant, good plaintiff rule of thumb. And so starting with those two things and then making an assessment, how good is the plaintiff and for what reason, how bad is the defendant and for what reason, are two factors that we look at, the two most heavily weighted factors. The other two are is liability an issue. 1 out of 5 is the scale that we use. So 5 on liabilities, a rear end car wreck, there's no defense. Clear liability,
yeah.
Mechanism of injury is a factor that we take into account. Looking at the photographs of the crash, how likely is it that a jury would see those photographs and say, I don't have any doubt that somebody got hurt here? Or on the other side, I can't see where someone would get hurt here. And so that obviously affects the strength of the case. And it also guides you, when you make these assessments early on, it guides you to where do you need to go to make your case stronger. And if there are weak spots that weigh the strength of the case down, if you can't overcome that by discovery, by just finding experts to bolster that element of the case, then don't try that case. That's leading you to guiding you to that this is a case not to try. But more often than not, it tells us what work we have to do. And so if we sit together and say, where do we put this client? I don't know much about them. As far as I know, they're good. I don't know, good or bad. Well, they're in the middle, but we can't leave it there. We have to find are the qualities of this client going to make the case better or worse? Are they going to lead a jury to rule in our favor, or tend to rule against us? And so, sort of the starting point on that is all of our clients have the code from the jury standpoint of it's not good, right? If they don't know anything more about our client, they're here to get money. They'll say whatever it takes to get money. They're almost faking, making this up as far as we know. And so you have to overcome that. And so if there are qualities of this client that show honesty, that show people can count on this client, that show this client has never taken, is always given. Well, now we're getting past that code and we're getting into the 4 or 5 territory. And so the strength of the case is assessed through making these individual assessments.
Yeah. And Steve, anything to add to that? I mean, Paul's going through these sort of elements of, okay, this is what we're looking at. These are the scores that we're assigning. It tells us where we might need to strengthen our case. You mentioned obviously finding what the defendant did wrong. We do what we call our evaluation committee meetings, where we'll roundtable cases that we have, and we'll say, okay, what are the strengths and weaknesses? What is this case possibly worth, or where should we try to go to get a great result for the client? And often we've been in those, the question is always, what did the defendant do wrong? What did the defendant do wrong? And have you deposed the defendant, right? And on these bigger cases, is that a common mistake you see with a lot of the firms that you work with? I know that you're trying cases not just for us, but for other firms. Is that a common mistake? It's just not knowing what the defendant did wrong, not taking the time to take that deposition?
I don't want to be a dead horse, but that is, to me, I know everything about how somebody's handling a case when I ask them a simple question. What is this case about? And they start telling me about how woeful their client is from all the stuff that happened to them. And I'm like, well, and so what I start telling people is, we're getting on the elevator, we're on the 35th floor, I hit 1, and now you have that much time to tell me about the case. Why should I care about your case? And if you're going to tell me how terrible the person's hurt, unless you got some small child that got hurt, maybe, but for the most part, you better be telling me why the jury should care. And let me tell you what the jury cares about: themselves. They want to know, what can I do to avoid this from happening to me? Right? And that's why you hear defense lawyers say, stop for a second and think about how many times you've heard this from a defense lawyer. This is one unfortunate accident. You know what that means? Nothing to see here, nothing we can do about it. Move on with your life. Right? Versus, man, there is something I can do about it. We can tell these people, stop hiring drug addicts to drive your trucks, right? All these kind of things. But there's another important part that we haven't discussed. And by the way, we could talk about this for 10 hours, Chad, but we'll talk about it as long as you want. We use focus groups because lawyers, man, we think we're smart. We think we're brilliant, right? And we like to talk. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else, right? But holy crap, man, tell your story in a short version, 5 minutes, and bring it to a focus group and say, what do you think about this? And they're going to say, here's the hole you have in your case. And you've never thought about it. Paul, how many focus groups have you done? Have you moderated? Hundreds? 1,000?
Hundreds.
Is it amazing to you? Or probably not anymore, right? That people just miss the boat completely and the focus groups go, this is what this is. Right?
It's amazing every time it happens, and it happens every time, that we are not keyed into the strength of the case or the weakness of the case. You kind of see the trees for the forest when you're with the case from the beginning and trying to build it, but only when you are able to show what you have to people who don't have an interest in it do you find out what you got. And 100% of the time, what the focus group finds as, I can't get over this one fact, or this is why this case means something to me, taps my emotion. Here's where it is. It's never what we expect. never what we expect. And so
That's right.
and we write cases off too quickly based on one bad fact. This guy has a history of using cocaine. But one of the things that's most consistent in focus groups is if they try to use the fact that this guy in his past had a problem with cocaine when that had nothing to do with how he got hurt here, shame on him. But we run scared from it,
We run scared, and everybody freaks out, and so that's why the focus groups are so powerful. Because when somebody's asking me about a case and they're telling me, and they're like, I'm trying this case in 2 weeks, what do you think? My first thought to them is, I want you to stop for a second and you go to day 2 of your trial. Juror number 7 goes home and husband says, hey, what's this case about? And she says, well, I can't talk about it. She goes, no, what's the case about? And whatever comes out of her mouth, that'll be solely controlled by you, which is, well, this is a simple case where somebody forgot to put up a barricade and somebody ran off the road. Right? If it's that simple, you won. If that person says, I don't know what this case is about. They're all talking about all kinds of stuff, and I really don't know. If you have that, you're going to lose. So if you have it where you've done the focus groups, and the focus group says, I know you have, because we have I think Amy Hall talks about this. We have the gift of knowledge and the curse of knowledge at the same time. We know all these facts, but all those facts don't matter. Right?
If the jury's confused, right? If the jury's confused,
what's the one thing? What is it? They come home and go, holy crap. Paul and I worked on a case in Tennessee against Lazy Boy. And it was some terrible facts of what this drug addict truck driver did and killed this lady. The facts were terrible, but we kept going, what is it that matters? And so we have like 10 or 12 facts. We're like, hey, rate these. And all of them said one thing. It's when the company knew he was dangerous and rehired him. All the other stuff didn't matter. It mattered a small amount. All it really cared about was, holy smokes, they knew he was dangerous and they rehired him. And so juror number 7 goes home day 2 and says, what's this case about? You're not going to believe this. Lazy Boy said, fire this guy, he's dangerous. And then they rehired him. And everybody knows what's happened next, right? No one has to wonder what happened. We all know.
It's amazing.
He killed somebody or did something terrible, right?
Since that revelation for us, and a lot of people probably already knew that's a big deal, but since that, I can't tell you how many cases I've come across where there's been just that situation. Somebody worked for the company, demonstrated some unsafe habits, either left on their own, and at that point the company says, oh, thank goodness they left, or got fired, and then they come back and they get rehired just because of the economics of this guy ain't the best, but we need somebody here. And so here he is. The rehire always upsets people. You had a chance to get away from danger. You knew there's danger, and for reasons other than protecting everybody, you brought the danger back. That's an easy sell.
Steve and Paul, I know you guys have heard this. We hear it all the time. I'm sure we share some of these stories or some of these insights with other firms and other attorneys, and they say, that's crazy. We never get cases like that. That never happens in our cases. You guys are so lucky.
Yeah, because what you have to understand is the only good cases are the ones that call us. All the other ones are shitty. Or there's another option. You got to look. If you're not looking, you're not going to find it, right? And if you're spending your whole time talking about, you're not going to believe this neck surgery this lady went through. I'm not telling you that's not important. I'm just telling you, until you figure out why a jury would care about the neck surgery, it really doesn't matter. And so I promise you, I don't think, Chad, I don't know how many firms you and I have been to and how many cases that we've looked at, me and my team have looked at, where it's like, man, look at this. Did you know this? Or let's go look for this. It's probably there, right? Simple things like you ask them, did they drug test that driver? I don't know. Well, because they didn't tell you. Well, did they? And then you find out they didn't. And then you find out why they didn't. we're working on another one where the safety director, after being deposed, said this. Well, Jim, he's part of the good old boys. And I was told specifically not to drug test the good old boys. What?
Yeah.
Right.
And I think there's a lot, there's a lot of great attorneys out there who are finding good stuff on the defendants. We've been fortunate to be, consistently find a lot of good stuff. Does it happen every single time? No, but when it does happen, it's case changing, right? And it's wild, and it happens more often. It exists more often than any of us think, and that's why we have to look and do. Gosh, it just completely changes the context and posture of the case.
Yeah.
If
you look hard enough and there's nothing there, then there's nothing there. That's the case. You don't try. I mean, that happens. But I can assure you, you're never going to find it if you don't look, right? So the people that just say, I don't know about this one. What? Just go look. What's the worst thing that could happen to you? You spend a little time finding out, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, you know what? There's a pretty good defendant trying to do the right thing. And you got to remember, insurance companies, they can't figure this out, right? All they care about is the math formula of what are the injuries and how do I pay for these injuries. They don't ever think about how bad am I going to look in front of 12 people. They don't think about that.
The best stories are never
work with firms.
In the end, that this company violated a DOT regulation. That's not a compelling story, never is. But you only get to that story if you know the DOT regulations, you do your discovery based on that, and you find how this company, whether they care about following the rules, right? And so those rules guide the company, and they guide your discovery of evaluating this company. But in the end, all that goes away. It keeps you in the case, it keeps you from getting dismissed, but all that goes away, and the story is one that people identify with, whether they know about DOT regulations or not.
Yeah, and and a lot of that gets stress tested during the focus groups, right? Back in the day when people said focus group, you go, what? Gosh, I need, I need to spend $50,000 and give me a month to put it all together. Maybe we'll get some stuff. But, today, I think, the art of doing a focus group in a very effective but efficient way is something that is absolutely available to all firms, right? And you can just go and just hey, like you guys said, here's the 12 key facts of the case, which one matters the most. And they give some clarity to maybe where to direct your efforts. And it's incredibly helpful. And, I think a lot of firms miss the boat on using that
I think
resource.
a lot miss it because when people hear focus group, they think of a mock trial. They think that, have to get all their evidence together. They have to get all their opening, their questions all sorted out, closing, and so it's only at the end of the case when I'm almost ready to try it that I could do a focus group. Well, that's totally missed the boat. All you need is the gist of the story that is you're going to work up, that you're hoping to work up through discovery, and see if that story matters and see what you need to add to it, subtract from it, and that's just a discussion amongst 7 or 8 people. With you listening, not telling, not guiding or advocating, but listening, and that will save you a lot of time, grief, and energy to focus on the things you need to and avoid the things you don't.
Well, how many do you do? What's your schedule now? Is it 1 week, 2 a week, 1 a month? I forgot where we are now.
2 a month now. 2 a month, yeah.
And we do it for other law firms as well.
Several cases in each session.
And it's just, what's important about this case? I mean, lawyers think they're smart. We're not. We're not as smart as we think we are. At least I'm not. I'm telling you, if you don't go take the opportunity to figure out why a jury will care. So one of the things that Paul does, which is pretty cool, is he'll do what we call a gut check, which is, if you tell the facts of a case, you tell the story about the case, and you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning I really don't care, 10 meaning my hair's on fire for having this shit going on in this world. Where are you? Where are you on that scale? And the higher that scale is, the better the case we have. It's that simple. The higher it is, we can go, okay, this is something the jury's going to go, we have to do something about, because that's what you want.
And when we're working with firms, and we'll have firms that reach out and go, hey, look, can we just run this by your team and give us some feedback? And whenever they start, this is just another rear end case. It's just a rear end case, or it's just a soft tissue case, or they kind of frame it out of the gate as there's nothing unusual. It almost tells your brain, hey, this isn't going to be an exciting. And so you're finding those unique things. And so, kind of to sum it up, I mean, what we're saying is, look, when you have these things that make your story, like it catches people's attention, it goes, hey, this may impact me. Hey, this may be important. I need to pay attention. I need to do something about this so that this does not exist or is tolerated in the world that I live in. And those cases make it more attractive to try. If you were to, I guess, sum it up for our listeners and say, okay, you know what, when you're looking at your cases and trying to pick out which ones to try, can you tie it up a little bit for us and say, look, remember these 3 things, or remember these key things when you're evaluating your cases in litigation?
Well, I mean, what we haven't talked about much is, and it's always a bummer that this has to come into play, but there has to be the ability to pay. There has to have a defendant that has the money, an insurance company that's out there that if you don't have the ability to pay, you can be the greatest lawyer in the world and go get a verdict that's just a piece of paper. And look, sometimes that's fun to do, but at the end of the day, we are a business and we have to figure out, there's enough ability to pay. But I'm telling you, if you just look at this very simple formula and you look at every case in this light, every single one, just look at it and say, do I have a bad defendant? And, just stop and think about it. Is this somebody that the jury would associate with or say, I'm not like that person? And the same holds true for the plaintiff. Can a jury say, I'm just like that person? Or would a jury say, I would never do that shit? If the jury says that about your client, you're going to lose, right? And it really is that for us. Now, trust me, we spent a lot of time talking about this, and Paul's got a very specific formula broken down of everything in a case. There's a lot more to it, but at the end of the day, this is where it has to start. Right? Just look and see, and then pick up the phone, call me, and say, "What do you think about this, Steve? I got this X, Y, and Z." I talk to people all day about cases. It's fun. I enjoy it. I love it.
That formula was only useful at the beginning. If you wait, you do it the week before trial, let's see what we got, don't bother, because there's nothing you can do about it at that point. If you find it's weak at that point, well, you're screwed. If you find it's strong at that point, well, we probably could have made it stronger, right? We probably didn't capitalize on that. But Chad, one thing we didn't talk about it, and it seems boring, and it seems, like make work, and it's received that way a lot here, as you know. But the elements of proof of the case, you can't underestimate the value of knowing that before you start making decisions about what information you need, what evidence you need, things like that. And I'll give you an example. Product liability case. I've read the product liability statute here in Louisiana many times. I have read cases applying that statute. And I'm getting ready for a deposition of the defendant's design expert. It's a defective design case. They could have put safety devices on the equipment. They chose not to. And so in his report, this expert says, you can't expect the company to put these safety devices on because you don't have any idea of what money it would take to do the research, to do the testing, to build the prototypes, and to survey the usefulness of these things. All of that has to be done. And so you say it's a $9 part, but this is millions, right? And so as I'm getting ready for the deposition, I go back to the elements. And in Louisiana, when it comes to the design of a product, the law says we hold the company, the manufacturer, to the level of an expert. And an expert always does testing, surveillance, builds prototypes, research, all the things they said are the reasons they shouldn't have to put this part on there. Our law says you have to do that before you tell us you can. And so it's pretty exciting when you have that type, you know, the elements, and you get that defendant to say the right thing that triggers that gives you the element word for word and locks down a part of your case. It's fun when you get that from a deposition. And those are the stories you'll go and tell in the office. Guess what I made this guy say?
Oh, yeah. And also, you know, the elements of proof, and people do fight this. You know, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do the work on it. It's
I know what I need to prove. I know what I need to do.
But if you listen to anything I said in the past, 45 minutes, you should understand that a jury's going to fill out a verdict form. And that verdict form is essentially the elements of proof. And you have to know exactly what you want the jury to fill on the form. What are you checking? What are they saying yes or no to? What are they putting amounts for? What are the items for damages? You have to know all those things, because if you don't know it, then how are you ever going to get a jury to rule in your favor? How are you going to get a jury to say, yeah, I agree, like the things Paul just talked about? And that's going to be on the verdict form. Did they do this? Did they do this? Did they not do this? But if you don't know them and you're going to go to take a deposition, then you have to figure it out later. Good luck. Then you're winging it at trial. And then you got to be a really good lawyer.
Yeah. And they'll hold it against you if you haven't told them how to do the job when they get in the room to answer that form. Nobody told us about this. So we didn't. How are we supposed to know? You got to tell them. You got to give them the formula. You got to give them the facts.
Any final words, comments that you'd like to share on this topic?
I'll go first. I think you have to have people.
Cover a bit.
You have to team up people who have the ability and the desire to not just try a case for the sport of trying a case, but to show the world what justice looks like. And you team that up with somebody who may not have the ability yet, but has the desire. Well, you really got something. You really have a dynamic force there. And not everybody who is a lawyer handling cases have those things down. And you need people that will stick to cases and work on cases and get them in a position to settle. The ones that you decided you don't want to try, somebody's got to do those. And so, but if you have that combination of ability and desire and teamwork, it takes more than one person. Then you've got what you need to be successful with these.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you. All right, Steve, good. Always good stuff. Always fun hanging out. And that's it for this podcast on looking at what cases your firm should try, which ones are not a good idea to try, making it more by design, not by default. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another eye-opening look into the personal injury world. Thanks for listening to Grow Fast, Grow Smart, the PI Playbook by Accelerator.